What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. Today, Blaine Spencer and the great Joe Chicoletti will be here shortly of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast are here tonight as we gear up for the beginning of the NBA Conference Finals, which tips off tomorrow night as the Lakers head to Denver to take on the Nuggets. And there is a lot to talk about. A bunch of coaches have been fired. Blaine's Warriors suck again. And not Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Adrian need to get out of Phoenix. All that and so much more next.
Give them a shot to do what?
Just like that, the great Joe Chicoletti has joined us. Joe, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Good to see you. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing better now that you're here, I'll be honest.
Yeah, look, I didn't know how you made it through the first 2 minutes. I mean, I felt bad for you, truthfully. I mean, you got to deal with this guy. What crap did he say to start the show? That's what I got to say. So,
well, he told
Luckily, I haven't said a word yet, so we're okay.
Well, he told me before the show he broke his hand because he was choking his chicken too much. So How are you, Blaine? Broken hand and all.
Marcus, I really should have just declined your offer as always.
What?
At this point, I mean, I just hung out with Joe for an hour and a half about an hour ago. So, we're just really bonding today. That's all.
Well, Joe's good people, though.
He is good people. Great people.
Nothing wrong with hanging out with Joe Chicoletti for an hour. I mean, come on.
He was just rubbing it in about his golf game. That's all.
Are you good at golf, Joe?
yeah, I'm pretty decent. I don't like to boost myself up too much, but yeah, I'm pretty decent. So,
Are you not good at golf?
I'm not good at golf. If I'll say that.
Are you good at golf, Blaine?
Oh no, he is way better than I am.
Well, we knew that.
I am a okay golfer. I can hold my own for about 5 or 6 holes, and then the wheels fall off.
33% of the way. That's
I'll live with that.
That's not good. That's not a winning mentality, Blaine.
That's fine at this point. I've accepted defeat. Just like my Warriors. So,
Joe, I'm glad all this negativity from Blaine Spencer hasn't rubbed off on you. I'm glad you're still happy. Well, Sixers aside, I'm glad you're still happy.
Yeah. Blaine didn't have to do any rubbing off there. I'll say the least. No pun intended, Bear. But the Sixers, they did enough for me yesterday. So they did me dirty on Mother's Day. So
that's unfortunate. Well, we'll get into the Sixers in just a second, but let's start with what has been a surge in coaching firings over the last week and a half. Nick Nurse fired by the Raptors a couple weeks ago. Monty Williams was let go by the Suns a few days ago. Mike Budenholzer was fired not long after the Bucks lost to the 8th-seeded Heat, who we'll also talk about later on in the show. I know this is a what have you done for me lately league, Joe, but what's going on with all these coaches getting fired, man?
Truthfully, I think it's just organizations looking at hey, we haven't really done anything over the last year or two. Maybe they don't like the way the offense is moving. Maybe they don't like the way the defense is moving. And it's just hey, we got to move on, and we're going to try and find bigger and better things. I mean, the Warriors did it. When I always think about head coaches, especially at this higher, Monty Williams, Nick Nurse and such, good coaches, right? Probably damn near almost NBA championship coaches, almost to say the least. You look back at what the Warriors did, right? Mark Jackson, was it Mark Jackson, right? That took them to, was it, I think, a Western Conference Finals, or may have been the finals at that point. And then boom, he got fired. And we were like, what's going on with this? Then they hire Steve Kerr, and the legacy begins, right? The dynasty begins, right? Sometimes you got to make moves, and, it's tough love, unfortunately, because a lot of the fans like them. Like Monty Williams, I like him a lot. I think he's a really, really good coach. Nick Nurse, I think, is a really, really good coach. But, sometimes the organization has to make a tough decision and be like, how far can that coach get me? Right. And maybe that's the Mecca for them, is that peak right there. And then from there on, it goes down, and you got to look forward there and more for the organization.
We look at some of these coaches that have been fired. I mean, you've got Mike Budenholzer, who's a multi-time coach of the year. He just won the finals a couple years ago with the Bucks, right? You've got Monty Williams, who's also a former coach of the year. His Suns lost to the Bucks when they won the championship. Frank Vogel, before all this kind of happened, he was fired by the Lakers coming off of a championship season. Nick Nurse coming off a championship season after a couple of years ago, he's fired as well. Blaine, are these teams looking for their next Steve Kerr, or are they just dumb?
Probably a little bit of both. I think everyone's kind of nailed it on the head that it's a little bit of a recency bias now in this. It's a 1 or 2 year tutorial that you guys get as a head coach. And if you're not up to snuff, to say the least, in regards of getting their team to a championship mentality, they're going to look elsewhere. Especially when it comes to Nick Nurse. I think for them, the organization feels like that Nurse had lost a lot of the locker room from some of the reports I had heard coming out of Toronto. And then when it comes to Budenholzer and Monty Williams, these are two coaches that really haven't gotten over, like we said, over the hump and gotten them to the finish line. I mean, Monty Williams got them to a finals, but then 2 years running back to back after that, they have gotten embarrassed, to say the least, as being kind, when it has really mattered. And then if you look at Mike Budenholzer, people were calling for his job after year 2. The championship kind of saved his job for an extra 1 or 2 years, if you really look at it. When it comes to regular season, his regular season coaching mentality of effort, with the Milwaukee Bucks being the top seed, usually year in, year out, but they haven't been able to find their groove in the postseason.
Well, so there's a couple firings that I think are justified, right? To your point, I think Mike Budenholzer deserved to be fired. Because like you said, like that championship that they had in 2021, that bought him a couple more years. Because he should have been fired before the championship. But they gave him one more year, he won a championship, he gets a couple more years. Nick Nurse and the Toronto Raptors, another firing that's not too surprised. Now, Nick Nurse benefited from Kawhi Leonard deciding to come there for a year, and they won the championship on the 1 year rental with Kawhi. But aside from that, since he's been gone, Nick Nurse hasn't done that well of a job in Toronto. You can attribute that to the absence of Kawhi, or you could attribute that to the absence of Nick Nurse. Which one the front office is going to decide? Clearly, they're blaming Nick Nurse, and that's okay. I do think the Monty Williams one is the most shocking, at least to me, right? Because Monty, while he did struggle at times, they don't have a bench. Like they don't have a bench. And that doesn't make the trade for Kevin Durant a bad trade, because when you can get a guy like Kevin Durant, who is one of the best players in basketball, if not the best player in basketball, depending on who you ask, you take that trade if you're a front office. And Monty was working with what he had. I do think that Monty Williams deserved at least one more year with a more well-rounded roster to see how far they can go. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. When you add on to the fact that the Suns were blown out twice in crucial games by 30-plus points in back-to-back years, it's hard to give Monty Williams a pass. This is going to be my favorite part of the show. The Golden State Warriors, Blaine, they got sent home. How you feeling?
I kind of went through my vent session earlier. I'm, it's bittersweet. I know I kind of hyped us up that we were going back to back, and that really didn't really take place, to say the least. I'm getting eliminated in Game 6 by the Los Angeles Lakers. But that series was kind of I don't know how to say the word. I can't. Nope, I'm not gonna think of the word. Too big of a word for me right now. It's thank you, Marcus. It was the free throw line versus the 3-point line. We let the Los Angeles Lakers pretty much dominate getting to the free throw line, and our team was the only way we were gonna win that series if we were gonna shoot lights out from the 3-point line. And we were nowhere close to that. Thank you to Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole. Klay Thompson had 2 solid games in games 1 and 2. We split there, non-existent after that. And then if you look at Jordan Poole, the man, I couldn't even tell you if he stepped on the court. That's how much of a non-factor Jordan Poole was. He might have been a negative on the court at that point. And then Steph Curry, if you look at Steph Curry's numbers, numbers-wise, it looks impressive. But if you actually deep dive into the statistics, he didn't shoot as well as what he usually does from the 3-point line and overall from the field. He did have that Game 4 triple-double where we came up short. That was because we did not run sets right in the final 2 minutes. But a lot of these games were not competitive outside of Game 1 and Games 4. So I'm surviving. I'm okay. This team was not built to win a championship as this regular season went through. So I will eat my words about being a hype man and as a fan, but I'm going to look at it from a non-biased perspective. And this team wasn't good enough to win a championship this year,
Joe,
even
you
though I
look a little
picked us in
puzzled,
7
buddy.
this year.
What's going on, buddy? You look a little puzzled.
This team wasn't built to win a championship this year. Can you elaborate on that? Coming off a championship win last year?
I
Maybe a different roster. Blaine Spencer.
I think the biggest thing is that was us paying Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins is that we let some of our 3-and-D defenders from our bench kind of walk, and Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody weren't really a factor this year. Otto Porter Jr., Gary Payton, we got back later in the year, but we needed more wing defenders, and that's how we were successful last year.
Wait, are
When it,
Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga not? They're not wing defenders.
well, they're wing defenders, but they didn't weren't up to snuff when they were not in the rotation basically until Moses Moody until they were forced to because Kevon Looney got sick.
Okay, well, they didn't have any playing time during the regular season. Whose fault is that?
Oh, that's on Steve Kerr.
Oh, okay.
100%. 100%. And
So-
even in game 4, Steve Kerr made a couple of questionable calls towards the end of the game. So
Steve Kerr's the reason why the Warriors dynasty is over. I just want to make sure we're on the same
the
page.
dynasty is not over.
Why
I think
is
we've got one more year at it. But we're not the front runner. We're not the front runner, to say the least.
You said a lot of crazy things. That might just be the craziest.
What, that the dynasty's not over?
With the 2024.
Or okay, so what does that indicate? That we're the favorite next year? Is that what you're implying by dynasty over?
No,
I think we have a legit chance next year to win the championship.
Warriors have a chance to win a championship next year. Well, it's the NBA. Everybody has a chance. I don't think they have a legitimate chance to win a championship next year. No. I think you look at the landscape of the Western Conference. I think the Suns will get better as they fill out that roster, and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant will continue to do a little bit what we saw them do through the course of the postseason. The Nuggets are the Nuggets, and they'll always be up there. You can't say the Grizzlies because Ja Morant hasn't learned his lesson yet. So the Grizzlies are not really in the picture. I don't think the Kings are going anywhere. I don't think this was
I agree.
a flash in the pan thing for the Kings. I think the Kings are going to be in the thick of things for as long as they're young and healthy and Mike Brown is the coach. I think the Pelicans are a bit of a wild card. I think as long as Zion Williamson stays healthy, they can be in the thick of things as well. The problem is Zion Williamson hasn't been healthy. And when your best player, or arguably your best player, at least at the very low, your second best player on the team isn't available, you're not competing for anything. The Thunder are on the come up. I think they'll continue to get better. We saw the SGA have an amazing season. I think Chet Holmgren's going to be reliable for the Thunder next season down low. As long as LeBron James is healthy, I have no reason to believe that this version of the Lakers can't make a run at it like they're making a run at it this time, except they won't be 2-10 at one point next season because this team is better than the team they started off. And of course you have the Warriors, but I think what we've done with Golden State is we have given way too much credit to the past and haven't paid any attention to the present. And the present state of the Golden State Warriors is that they are not capable of winning games on the road. And as we all know, playoff series start on the road. And if you can't win a game on the road, that's not good. Now, they won Game 7 against the Kings, but it took Steph Curry to have, at the time, the greatest Game 7 performance in the history of basketball for them to win that game. Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, they all had the worst games of their playoff careers in Game 6 against the Lakers. It's not going to cut it. I'm not saying the Warriors won't be in the thick of things because they are a good basketball team when they're healthy and winning. All the teams I mentioned had one of the best records at home in the West of the season. If they can't win games on the road, they're going to be sitting at home come this time again next season.
No, I that's a valid argument. I think the team's going to really have to predicate the regular season next year because they have
Kuminga aren't getting minutes. They're reliable. They're there for a reason. These are two guys that are good basketball players. And I think if given the time, they can prove that they're good basketball players. I don't know why they're not getting.
I think part of that is Steve Kerr still, like you mentioned, stuck in the past. He's extremely reliant on our big three. You had to see it in that series. All three of them had to play 44 to 45 minutes just for them to even potentially get blown out 3 out of the 4 games that they lost.
I mean, either Steve Kerr evolves as a head coach or he'll be the next former champion that we're talking about next season that's hitting the unemployment line. Joe, I want to get your thoughts, man. Although, is the Warriors dynasty done?
I got to get some clarification from you guys. What do you consider as a dynasty?
I think what we've seen from the Warriors classifies as a dynasty. I think LeBron James himself is a dynasty.
Yes.
I think what we're talking about, right, is it goes beyond appearances. And I think that was one of the arguments that a lot of people have with the Chiefs, right? Because up until this Super Bowl this past season, they were just appearing in Super Bowls and appearing in AFC Championship games. They were making it to the Super Bowl, but they hadn't won one. They had won one and lost one, right? I think the second one for the Chiefs has solidified that maybe there is a dynasty brewing. So it's more than just appearances. Like, we're talking about a basketball team that up until Game 6 had won 19 straight Western Conference playoff series without losing.
And had won 28 consecutive road
And had won 28
games.
Like, this is what we're talking
series.
about. It was one of the it was a team that let's be honest, right? If KD is healthy in 2019, they would have three-peated against the Raptors. But he wasn't healthy. Like, if KD and Klay Thompson are healthy, they absolutely would have been.
Even if one of them out of the two is healthy, you probably three-peat.
Right, and more so Kevin Durant than Klay Thompson because he's the better basketball player. But I think even if Klay Thompson is healthy and not KD, it'd be tougher. But I still think they get the job done. And we're talking about the Warriors being the first three-peat in basketball for the first time since was it the Lakers way back when in the early 2000s, right? Like, they're in a dynastic run right now. Like, they have made it to since 2015 season. We're talking about now coming up on our 9th NBA Finals since then. They've been in, when healthy, all of them. The only time they haven't been in one is when they weren't healthy. Mm-hmm. So in 2020 and in 2020, and in 2021. When they're healthy, they make it. I don't know. They'll definitely be a playoff team next season. I just don't know if they will appear back in a NBA Finals and then win another one. And I was super hesitant to say that last season because I thought last season they had a lot to prove and they proved it. This season's different, though. Like, I don't know if the Warriors still have that same chokehold on the NBA the way that they did, of course, when they had KD and they were going up against basically LeBron and nobody in the finals. I don't know. It's tough.
I see what you're saying. I see your point. I don't think it's over just yet. Truthfully, I think I was talking to Blaine a little bit earlier about it. Like, to me, of course, it's Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, right? And Draymond kind of runs it as well. But then in addition, you have that center role that was the defensive anchor for him, like an Andrew Bogut kind of thing for that however many years that he had, right? And then on top of it, you had a guy that could rebound the ball when the three-point shots were missed, was able to withstand the centers, was able to have some length on the other side. I think, truthfully, the Lakers won that series purely based on the length of AD and the chance to work the inside game and outside game as well. I think Game 6, if I'm not mistaken, Draymond Green had to start at the center role. Look, as much as Draymond's a great defender, he's not 6'11" covering Anthony Davis. I mean, plain and simple. But, like, if you look at the roster, and that's why Kevin Looney was at least okay in a manageable center and looked good against the Kings, is because, he was able to hold his length in that series. But as soon as you go up against AD, you're going up against a 6'11" center at this point. Looney has no shot at that point because he's 6'8", 6'9", I think. Now, truthfully, this offseason, now, if they come and bring a center in, maybe that's a little bit more down that line of what we just discussed in Andrew Bogut. That the dynasty could repeat right back next year. Steph Curry could be back on his MVP. Klay Thompson now has a full year off-season wise, healthy, under his belt, ready to rock and roll at this point. And maybe Jordan Poole finds his shot and could hit it from planet Pluto at this point. I don't know. I don't think it's over just yet, though.
What's more crucial to it not being over? Is it the ability to win those road games, or is it the ability to find someone that was in the Andrew Bogut role? Me personally, I think that Kevon Looney is so one of the reasons why, and I've talked about this on my show before, like one of the reasons why I think James Wiseman didn't fit wasn't because he wasn't a good basketball player. I think he was just too talented to do what the Warriors asked their bigs to do.
Yes. Which
is play defense and rebound the ball. That's all they needed Kevon Looney to do, and he's done that. That's all they needed, to your point, the Andrew Bogut's and the Zaza Pachulias and the Festus Azelis of the world. Like, they're only truly dynamic, knockdown, like, give him the ball, he can catch and shoot big that they had on that run was Maurice Spates. He could knock down the long ball. All those other bigs didn't really have that. And as Steph and Clay and Draymond, as they've gotten older, the role for the center has gone back to, like you were saying, that Andrew Bogut role. Bro, just go down low, be that big body, crash those boards when the shots aren't hitting, and then play some defense, or at least make it challenging for the other center. Kevon Looney did that. I don't think, me personally, I do not subscribe to the idea of you having two guys that you picked in the top 14 a couple years ago, in Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, not playing quality minutes, because they can, if given the opportunity, they can be those wing defenders that Blaine was alluding to earlier. And I think that's what's been detrimental to, and that's why there's a lot of Warriors fans that are kind of upset about their production. It's not their fault. They haven't been given the opportunity. I think if you give them the opportunity, they can show up and they can be what they need you to be. That's why I thought they let Gary Payton walk, because they had two young guys that can do what Gary Payton could do, but they're bigger, they're longer, they're slightly more athletic, and it's two of them, not just one of them. So you got two guys doing the same thing. It makes you more versatile defensively. They had one of the best defenses in basketball last season, the second best defense in basketball specifically, and it led them to a championship. This season, that was not the case, and I think a lot of that had to do with Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga not getting minutes. And maybe I'm overrating them, right? Like maybe I am. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't think so. I think if given the opportunity, Moody and Kuminga can prove that they can be reliable role players, both defensively and offensively, for the Warriors next season. And then maybe the dynasty's not over. I would say as of right now, though, I think it is.
I got a question for you guys, just based off of Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga. Steve Kerr really hasn't had to develop young players yet. He kind of picked up, because Mark Jackson was the one that really developed this team, and then Steve Kerr took them that next step.
Right.
We've seen now Poole, Moody, and Kuminga, all two of them that didn't get play minutes, and then the other kind of took a step back. Is that a hindrance on Steve Kerr, on his staff, that he's not really focusing on development?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, right? Because exactly what you said, like he was handed this team, right, and was able to deliver going forward there. I think of it kind of like, as I hate to go back to the Sixers, right? We had Brett Brown for how long, and he was able to slightly develop players, right? And then we moved on to Doc Rivers, and was able to make playoffs in that case, right?
Sure.
Some coaches are more for development purposes, some are more for leading a team to the promised land, and some can do a combination of both. That's where you got to try to find your median a little bit. If you can find the combination, great. And you might be right. Steve Kerr might just be only able to lead the team to the promised land, able to do that, make the right calls, make the right decisions. But maybe when it comes to the development side of things, he's just not able to do it. I think that's a great point.
I 100% agree. I don't know where this narrative that Steve Kerr is a good player developer has come from. I don't know where the narrative that the Warriors in general have been good at player development has come from. That just hasn't been the case. They've won championships with Harrison Barnes, who at the time was a solid basketball player. Obviously, Andre Iguodala, who's a former Finals MVP, right? They won 2 championships with Kevin Durant. Of course, Steph was there. Of course, Draymond was there. Of course, Clay was there. Do you want to say Steve Kerr developed Jordan Poole? I don't. I think Steve Kerr just benefited. I think Jordan Poole just benefited from Clay's absence, being able
and
to
Steph's injury too,
and
from
Steph's
both of their
injuries,
injuries.
being able to just get into his own rhythm and then learning how to adjust when now they're both on the floor with him. That's really it. I don't think Steve Kerr's developed anybody in Golden State, and that could be the problem. All right, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns, who, man, as a KD fan, I really, really wanted them to at least get to the conference finals. Do you know what I mean? Because now I got to sit here for the next 10 months and listen to guys like Blaine Spencer and guys like Justin Marvel sit here and tell me that KD is not the man that we all know that he is. Blaine, should DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul suit up for Phoenix next season?
That's an interesting one, right? I think it comes down to, how does this team want to be shaped now after the firing of Monty Williams? What direction do they really want to take this franchise? It seems to me that it's going to be Booker and Durant, and then everyone else falls into place. I feel like the team is, with the new owner, he's already put his stamp on this team by firing Williams, that he wants his own start with this squad. He traded for Durant. He knows what he wants. it seems to me that I would let both walk. I would try to trade DeAndre Ayton. The man really just sulks out there probably 75% of the time if he doesn't touch the ball. And then you have Chris Paul. When after his groin injury, the team actually looked like they looked better with Cameron Payne in there than without him, just because the Phoenix went to a more up-tempo style of a game, pushing the tempo up and down the court. Chris Paul's one that wants to dictate the pace and sometimes slow the game down more and play more of a half-court style instead of a run and gun style. But you'd have to be real serious here to keep them, but I would be letting both go. I really would, just because of what this team needs. And I think they need more intensity and speed than what they are presenting now. And if you go small, you try and find a stretch, maybe a stretch five or another four. You play Kevin Durant at the four and you go small ball. I think that would be the best way for Phoenix moving forward.
Joe Cicoletti, what's happening with Ayton and Paul next season?
I think you got to move on from Ayton. I think he's just trouble in the locker room. Truthfully, I mean, there was stuff at the beginning of this year, or the end of last year. There was trouble in paradise there, and he didn't want to sign. Then he ended up signing, and just kind of didn't seem right there. Chris Paul, I don't really have a problem with coming back. Truthfully, if I'm not mistaken, I think he signed a contract. He's still under contract for 2 more years, getting paid $30 million, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to unload that contract, I think, unless you get like a veteran team that would be more interested in, like a Miami Heat or something like that. In that case, if they're looking for a point guard, but I think it's going to be a little more difficult. I think it's easier to trade Ayton, right? Because obviously you have the youth on the side. You have, a damn near 7-foot center, may want to be like the focal point of an offense now. And I think he can do it. He might just need to change the scenery. But yeah, I think you make a point. I think you need a little bit more of a stretch center or, a defensive center. I think they lacked a little bit defensively this playoff time, right? Yeah, the one game I know I did sit down and watch of that game. Unfortunately, here on the East Coast, it's a little late. I got to fall asleep. I got to get up the next morning. But Jokic had 52 that game. And I understand the Suns won, and Jokic is a beast, but 52 points, that's a lot of points right there. I just think they lack defensively, and if they could find a couple defensive players, maybe 3-and-D guys, like when Jay Crowder was there, they were able to play great defense, right? Guys like that. In that case, you're going to have scores, right? Booker can get you 35 a game, right? Kevin Durant can still get you 28 a game, no problem, no questions asked. But if you can find that defensive guy that can lock down the other side of the ball, the best player there, I think that's the key for them this offseason.
First of all, DeAndre Ayton is Charmin soft and should not be allowed back in the state of Arizona unless it's a road game for another team. To your point, Joe, I understand Jokic is a 2-time back-to-back MVP. I understand he's one of the best players in basketball, the best player at the position, especially considering what Joel Embiid did just last night in that Game 7 pitiful performance. But, dude, 52 points is unbelievable. 52 points, and DeAndre Ayton's taller. There was no effort defensively. There was no effort on the glass, offensively or defensively. DeAndre Ayton should not be allowed back in the state of Arizona unless it's a road game. And I think the same can be said for Chris Paul. When you look at what they did, first of all, the Phoenix Suns have lost 1 game since Chris Paul has been in Phoenix without him. They lost 1 game, and it was the end of their playoff run this year against the Nuggets. That's the only game they've lost without Chris Paul. This team, especially this year, plays.
Oh, boy.
Excuse me. They play better. They push the pace. They run. You can't do that when Chris Paul is there. He's too slow. And for guys like Devin Booker and guys like Kevin Durant, even a guy like Landry Shamet, who had a great game in Game 4, I think, to tie it up going back to Denver. Like, they need to get those open rhythm jump shots. I don't care if it's mid-range. I don't care if it's a 3. They need that. Chris Paul doesn't do that. He has to go. The problem is Chris Paul is approaching his 40s, and he's got a fat contract. And I don't think there's anybody who wants to trade for that contract. I don't care if it's a young team or a veteran team. I do not think there's any team in the NBA today that would be willing to take on that contract from Chris Paul. I don't. It's just too much for a guy at his age who's not performing the way that he should be, or the way that he has shown us that he can over the last couple seasons since he's been in Phoenix. DeAndre Ayton has got to go. Chris Paul has got to go. I don't know what you need to do. Like, I don't know who needs to come into Phoenix, but they got to figure it out because DeAndre Ayton, Charmin Shaft, and when you look at the state of the big men in the Western Conference, you've got Jokic, you've got AD, you've got DeMontis Sabonis, who is slowly coming into his own in Sacramento. Again, you have Zion Williamson when he's healthy. He's not a big man, but he would have a field day with DeAndre Ayton down low. Like, there needs to be something done down low because DeAndre Ayton's not the answer. He's never going to be the answer. He's been in the league for 5 years. It's not the answer. He was not worth.
Where would Ayton go? The free agent market was so low for him last year. I think Indiana was the only one to truly offer him a sheet, and Phoenix matched it. He did not have much of a market last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle to get out of his deal too.
I don't know. I mean, you're not wrong. I 100% agree with you. And it doesn't help that what he's done in his 5 years in the league, it's been the epitome of inconsistency on both sides of the ball. But he can't be in Phoenix next season. He can't be wearing orange, black, or white for the Phoenix Suns next season. That's not going to be a recipe for success as far as it pertains to getting back to and hopefully winning an NBA championship for next season. He's got to go. I don't know. Maybe he needs to take a plane, go over there to Shanghai with Dylan Brooks. I don't know what needs to happen. But he cannot be in Phoenix next season. It is not a recipe for success. The DeAndre Ayton experiment needs to be done. They gave him a chance, and I think they gave him the chance, and they matched that offer sheet that you're talking about Blaine last season, simply because who else you're going to get, right? The market for big men specifically wasn't that great. I don't know what Indiana would have demanded for a guy like Miles Turner, but Miles Turner is no scrub, and they would have demanded a hunk of something. And I don't know if the Suns would have been willing to do what is necessary to bring Miles Turner to the desert. So they had to stick with DeAndre Ayton because he was only shot. But he's got to go, man. I don't know what's going to happen. You're right. The trade market might not be that buzzing for a guy like DeAndre Ayton, who has been very inconsistent, especially when you look at the guys he was picked over in that draft. And you see what Trae Young has done in his short career in the league. You see what Luka Doncic has done in his short career. Two guys that he was picked over, and they're one of the best players at their position, best young players in the league. He's got to go. I don't care where he goes.
Does he go to a team like, let's say that's a younger team, like a Hornets, right? You know, with a LaMelo Ball, and a team's not really there yet, but they're moving their way up to that point. Maybe that need a center role. Like I'm trying to think of teams potentially that could use that, or is it at the point where what's that?
Send them to the Wizards.
Okay,
the Wizards are always trading for bad basketball players. Send them to the Wizards, and then Wizards fans can complain about, oh, we don't win championships. We got to stop paying Bradley Beal. No, that's not the problem. Send him to the Wizards. I don't know if you go get Kevin Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think you would. I don't know if you go get a guy like Daniel Gafford. Send him to the Wizards. That's the first name that comes to mind. Send him down there. I think he could fit down there. Well, the Wizards think anybody can fit down there. That's why they're not a good basketball team. But at least for the Suns' point of view, right? They could use one of those. The Wizards have some solid big men that they might have to bite a bullet on a trade like they did with Kevin Durant, but. Anything to get DeAndre Ayton out of Phoenix. Send him to Washington. Maybe send him to Charlotte. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you'd get back as far as making sure that you're getting back a big man in return for that. Because
I'm pretty sure PJ Washington's a free agent this year.
And I don't think they want Mason Plumlee. I don't know like what that does for you.
It's Chicago. I think Chicago's leaning towards a rebuild maybe if you go that way with Vucevic.
He's a free agent too, I believe.
Is Vucevic a free agent?
I mean, I'm trying to think. You've got Zubats, who's kind of like, again, one of those Andrew Bogut type of players who can get you boards now and then, but he's not that physical of a guy. Like, I don't know what you do. I don't know why they let JaVale McGee walk, because JaVale McGee was very reliable for them when he was down there in Phoenix. I don't know what happened, but they need to figure it out. DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul cannot be Phoenix Suns next year. Will they? More than likely, because there's no market for them, but they shouldn't be. Phoenix should do everything in their power to make sure that number 25 and number 3 don't step back foot in the desert unless it's a road game. I have nothing left. Speaking of having nothing left, the New York Knicks suck. What a surprise. Julius Randle sucks. What a surprise. Joe Ciccoletti, what is next for Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks following, let's be honest, an unacceptable loss to the Miami Heat in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, man, they just ran into the Michael Jordan right now of the NBA basketball. That's Jimmy Butler, man. Jimmy Buckets. Matt Man is on fire right now. Look, first off, I gotta give credit to the Knicks when they, when credit's due, right? They did make it out of the first round, haven't made the playoffs in however many years right now. Get a comeback, beat the Cavs. Look, Cavs weren't the hardest opponent to get. They weren't the easiest opponent to get, but they were new to the playoffs as well. So good win for them, to get it out. They did fight what they were able to do, but we came into the series and we knew Miami was going to beat them. It's just a matter of how many games at this point. I actually give credit to New York for making it this far, getting into the second round, taking it to 6 games at that point, right? And just, trying to do as best as they can. Now, what they do moving forward, I don't know. I hate RJ Barrett. That man is a terrible basketball player. I don't even know why he is on this team, and he should be on the bench. He is terrible. When he gets the ball in transition, you might as well just run to the basket because he's going to shoot it every single time. He has not passed the ball at all. It's unbelievable to watch. But Jalen Brunson, kudos to him. And Dallas has made a terrible move not picking him back up, right? Because now he is the man of New York, right or wrong at this point. Julius Randle looks as a solid power forward for right now. I think he's like a top 30 player in the league, truthfully. That's what I say at the very least. They need more help, though. I mean, plain and simple. They don't have enough at all. They got a decent bench, but they need more help. They need another scorer at this point.
Joe, I don't disagree with you often, but I don't know about Julius Randle being top 30. That's a stretch to me.
Well, off camera, we will try to go through the 30 players, and I think Randall's damn near close to that.
I think we can go through 30 players right now that are better than Julius.
No, that's too much. That's too much mind thinking for me right now.
Nah, man. I probably could name 40, but it's okay. You want to do it off camera? We can do it off camera. Blaine Spencer. What's next for the New York Knickerbockers?
I mean, it's trying to figure out how to teach Julius Randle and RJ Barrett to go right. That's even Jalen. That's your first problem, because you're not going to be able to get rid of either of them at this point. So, and neither of them have a right hand. So you might, because pretty sure the Miami Heat were just on one side of the court, forcing them to go right, and they were still going left. So the biggest thing, you do have to give the Knicks some love in comparison that they got out of the second round. I mean, you beat the team that you really wanted the player for in Donovan Mitchell. So that that's their first mistake was not getting Mitchell, but you did get through there. And this is something that I kind of said last week was that effort wins games in the Eastern Conference. It gets you into the postseason, and that's what the Knicks have done 2 out of the last 3 years. But it's not the formula to get you to the promised land when it comes to being at the Mecca of basketball, that is the Madison Square Garden. You have to – Julius Randle, he is a powder. He's very similar personality-wise to DeAndre Ayton. You're not going to be able to trade him, though. There's not many assets to get back for him. And Joe, to kind of push back on your RJ Barrett, is that arguably he might end up being the best draft pick in his class because Zion can't stay on the court because of his weight, and then Ja can't stay on the court because of his off the court stuff. So RJ might end up being the best pick.
So,
Darius
Garland's better than RJ Barrett. He was also drafted in 2018. So.
Oh, was he? All right, then.
I think John Moran's already better than RJ Barrett.
Well, that's true, but if you look down the road, if Ja can't stay on the court because he's doing stuff off the court, it won't matter.
I don't even think he has to. He's still better than him.
Look, I can't believe that we're sitting here. Bro, leave it to a Commanders fan to find a moral victory. Like, that's what you guys do.
That's what
there are no moral victories.
Why does this always relate to the Commanders every time for you? You just have to reel it in as a DC native, don't you?
You're a fan of one of the worst franchises in football. It's easy.
We're in the right direction. We finally got Snyder out. Thank God.
Who's your starting quarterback for next season? Thank you.
Some guy named Sam Howell.
Yeah, exactly. So good luck trying to get Caleb Williams next year. Anyway, the New York Knicks are garbage. I don't know why we're doing this. We've seen this movie time and time again.
What are you going to do with the New York Knicks? They have no trade assets. None.
Great. That's their problem. No one told them to go get Julius Randle. Nobody told them to go draft RJ Barrett. Like, the only good player on that roster that we saw in this postseason was Jalen Brunson. And no disrespect to Emmanuel Quickly because he had some solid games down the stretch of the regular season. But When two players in your big three are massive liabilities, offensively and defensively, something's wrong. Something is wrong in New York. Something is wrong in Madison Square Garden. And until the Knicks get out of their own way and figure out what the issue is, they're going to continue to suffer. They've been suffering all my life. And just like the Commanders, they will probably suffer for the rest of my life. The New York Knicks are trash. Let's call a spade a spade. They suck. Shout out to Jalen Brunson for being their best player. The bar wasn't that high this season to be their best player, but he was that, and a bag of chips. Everything that is advertised about Jalen Brunson from his time in Dallas, he proved, and it all came to fruition during his time this season in New York. Julius Randle has to go. Let's be honest. RJ Barrett, he got to go too. Like, neither of these players are good basketball players. And when your second best player sits up in a post-playoff game press conference and says, oh, well, they just wanted more. Like, what are you doing? Where's the heart? Where's the fight? I will never assign a moral victory to anyone. And I'm definitely not giving out a pity moral victory because the Knicks failed to get Donovan Mitchell. They don't get credit for beating Donovan Mitchell when they failed, when they're the reason why he's not in New York. What's wrong with you?
I don't think they suck, personally. There is a lot more worse teams.
Look at your Wizards,
in the Eastern
Marcus.
Conference right now.
They suck. I don't know
where you got that from.
They are at least a top 5 team in the East, but they have no shot at an NBA championship over the next 10 years. I don't even think they have a shot to win the Eastern Conference Finals over the next 10 years because you have 2, if not 3 other teams that are always going to be ahead of them no matter what in the Boston Celtics, Milwaukee Bucks, and Miami Heat. No doubt about it.
Well, the team, they're also content on just being a playoff team. They could not care less if they end up getting the Eastern Conference Finals at this point. And you can see it in 2 out of the last 3 years. Oh, we made it. We exceeded expectations. That's it for us.
No, man, we are in the business of checks and championships. And the Knicks are handing out way too many checks to way too many people, and it's not producing championships. RJ Barrett, gotta go. Julius Randle, gotta go. Like, to be completely honest, like the only 2 players that shouldn't be going, 3 players that shouldn't be going anywhere, Mitchell Robinson, Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickly. That's it. I don't know what we're supposed to do. I don't know why we keep doing this with the New York Knickerbockers. We did it when Julius Randle first got there. We did it last season. We're doing it this year. When are we going to learn as the public that the New York Knicks just ain't it no more, and they ain't been it for over 50 years? It's just not happening. It's just not happening, and we need to get used to that. The Knicks suck. They're going to continue to do this. They are the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA. They're going to continue to give their fans hope, and just when it's time for them to show up and do what they got to do, they will let their team down. That is what they do. That's what they're going to continue to do. It's unfortunate. I don't know what else to tell you, Blaine. Joe, like, I'm not in the excuse-making business. I'm not in the moral victory business, and the Knicks deserve neither. This is the product you put on the floor on a night-in, night-out basis, and you do not get a moral victory for beating a player you failed to trade for. That's on them. They don't get a moral victory for beating Donovan Mitchell when they failed to get him. It's not like Donovan Mitchell chose not to go there. That's different. No, they failed. The New York Knicks are the reason why Donovan Mitchell is in Cleveland and not in New York, and it's their fault, and it's always their fault because the organization is garbage. They suck, and the sooner we get to that realization, the sooner the world of basketball can come to peace. I am so sick of New York Knicks fans. I really am. Because we're going to hear the same thing next season. They're going to win, what, 45, maybe 50 games. They'll lock up the 5th or 6th seed. They'll win a couple games in the first round, might even make it out. And you're going to get boneheads like Stephen A. on national TV yelling New York stand up and all this other stuff. Bro, they're not a good basketball team. I really don't know what else to tell you. I don't. I wish I had more for you, but I don't.
But isn't that I'm not saying it's a failure, but it is a successful season to make the playoffs and get out of the first round. To most teams in the NBA, they would be happy in that case. I understand in the end, the goal is an NBA championship. I completely agree with you, right? But how many teams are there in the NBA, and how many teams get out of the first round? If you're already in that, you're top 30% in that case, top 25%. So to say they suck, I think it's an overstretch, an overcommitment to say, I don't think they suck. I just don't think they're going to get to the promised land of a championship in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah,
Yo,
they don't get in that contender category, Marcus. They will always
33% of basketball teams make it to the playoffs. Yes, nearly a quarter of the NBA makes it to the first round. 13% makes it to the second round. I do not care. You are talking about a conference that has the Celtics, the Bucks, maybe the Sixers, right?
Miami. You better say Miami. You
And
better
the
give them
Miami Heat.
respect.
The New York Knicks are not on their level. And in the last 4 to 5 years, they've done nothing to get close. The Atlanta Hawks have made it to an Eastern Conference Finals more recently than the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks are supposed to be better than the Atlanta Hawks. Let's really sink that in. Let's let that sink in for a second. I don't care if it's because Ben Simmons is an idiot and just it wasn't aggressive in that game 7. I don't care what the reason is. The fact of the matter is you get in this business to write checks and to win championships. And the people who the Knicks write checks to on a month-to-month database, however NBA players get their checks. I don't know if they're first and 15 like most regular human beings. I don't know if they get paid every other Friday. I don't know if they get direct deposit. I don't know what happens. However these people on this roster are getting their checks, they ain't the people to get the job done. You're not competing with the cream of the crop in the conference, and that's an issue because the Knicks are in the business to win a championship. They won a championship in 50 years. Haven't gotten close. Why are we continuing to give teams who say they're trying to do one thing, and yet when they fail, why do we keep trying to give them passes? The Knicks don't deserve a pass. They failed. They don't have Donovan Mitchell because they failed. They lost to the Heat because they failed. I understand how great Jimmy Butler's been doing, but they were the better team going into that series. Half of their key players in Miami was hurt, and they lost that series.
And yet everyone was still picking Miami to win that series.
Because of what we saw from Jimmy Butler. That doesn't negate the fact that they should have won the series. A lot of people thought the Grizzlies were going to win against the Lakers. Where are they? Well, Ja's not in Cancun, but everybody else is, right? Like we don't have to keep doing this. The Knicks aren't. Well, he's going to be in a prison in Cancun probably, but the New York Knicks just aren't it, and it's okay. Like there's some teams that just aren't it. I just don't like organizations that lie to their fan bases and sell their fan bases dreams. And then when they don't reach what they set out to do in the season, it's everybody else's fault but their self. The Knicks need to learn how to do some introspection. That's what needs to happen. Or else we're going to keep seeing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I am sick of it. I'm sick of the New York Knicks. I'm sick of Knicks fans. I'm just sick of it. I really, really am. The Knicks are probably why I have a sore throat right now. I'm sick of it. Just genuinely sick of the New York Knicks. And there's nothing Blaine Spencer, and with all due respect, you, Sir Joe Gicoletti, can tell me to make me think otherwise. They are garbage. They get in their own way. They don't meet their goals. They get moral victories when they're the reason why they're in the position they're in the first place.
Okay, Marcus, how are you returning the Knicks to the promised land? What are you doing if you're the GM?
Bro, they're never getting to the promised land.
Well, I mean,
the entire
let's give them the Dallas Cowboys mentality of giving that false hope. What would you do to deliver to the fans of New York a chance?
But the difference is the Dallas Cowboys actually make concerted efforts on a year in, year out, year in basis, whether it's through the draft or through free agency, to get one step closer. Just because you're a Commanders fan and you don't want to see that because they kick y'all's butt twice a year, every year for the last 15, 20 years, doesn't negate the fact. That's the truth. The Dallas Cowboys are far closer to a championship than the New York Knicks will ever be. They need to start investing in what it takes to win a championship. And until they do that, we're going to have to sit here and every time this year around, watch Stephen A. Smith put on that nasty orange creamsicle looking suit and sit on our TV screens for a week or two yelling New York stand up and doing all this other stuff just so we can be heartbroken when they get sent home, calling everybody pathetic. I'm done with the New York Knickerbockers. The Detroit Pistons might just win a championship before the New York Knicks do. I'm done. I don't think the Knicks are going to make the playoffs next year. I don't. I really don't. It's time to close the book on this New York Knicks excitement. And you can look at me like that all you want, Blaine Spencer, okay? I didn't do it to you, all right? I didn't do it to you.
I didn't look at you at all, at anything there. Go to the next topic. What's the next topic?
What's the next topic? We're going to talk
Yeah.
about Joe Ciccoletti's 76ers choking.
Oh yeah, give him the floor. Just let him go.
Joe
You don't even have to worry about it.
Joe Ciccoletti, what happened to the process, man? I thought we were trusting the process. It's been 10 years. Haven't made it to the conference finals. What's going on?
I have never, in my entire watching career of the Philadelphia 76ers, have been more disappointed in an effort in a game 7 in yesterday in Boston, Massachusetts. I have never been more upset watching a game. I said after the game, I would have rather had the Kawhi Leonard triple doink and live through that gut-wrenching experience again than live through what I saw yesterday in Boston, Massachusetts. You want to talk about a team not even coming out to the floor to play. You want to talk about an MVP not wanting the ball, not wanting to score, not what I don't know what he did offensively yesterday, especially in that first quarter. Celtics began. What was that?
He scored 15 points offensively.
The first quarter, Boston comes out on an 8-2 run, and the Sixers answered on an 8-0 run, and they go up 10-8. I texted one of my buddies, and I said, what is Joel Embiid doing out there? And he goes, Joe, it's early in the game. I said, Joel Embiid does not want to be on the floor right now. He looks horrific offensively. Al Horford was playing defensive, unbelievable defensive game against Joel Embiid. I don't even know what to say. Joel Embiid, the only good thing he did yesterday was be a slight defensive anchor for this team that we could have gotten from Clint Capella if he was out on the floor at this point. But then, let's talk about James Harden on the other side. That man should have just stayed in Las Vegas like he did a week ago and should have just went back to the strip club there because he should have never been on the floor yesterday. He should have just stayed out on vacation. Doc Rivers should have sat Harden down at the end of the second quarter and said, buddy, you look like shit right now. We're going to have to sit you and let Tyrese kind of rock the show and try to get Melton out there, try to get another spark. He looked horrific. I mean, he had 6, 7, 8 turnovers, couldn't hit a shot. It was unbelievable to watch. Then on top of that, Doc Rivers, buddy, you got to make a defensive change. Tatum is cooking you at this point. Drop to a 2-3 zone. Try to blitz him. Double team him. Do something. Have somebody other than Jason Tatum beat you. No, we don't figure that out until the end of the third quarter when you're down 25 points. It was a horrific experience to live through. And halfway through the third quarter, I was sitting on my deck enjoying my cigar at the time till half. Then I started smoke stressing my cigar at this point because I got no shot to live through this right now. And Tatum hit a dagger to put him up 22. All I remember doing is I grabbed my TV, I unplugged it, and I walked it back down the steps and did not watch another single of that minute of game because of how terrible that team did yesterday.
He's got a point, man. They entered 30 seconds into the third quarter. It was 55 or whatever. You look up and they're down almost 30. Blaine Spencer, what's next for the Sixers to get them over the hump, man?
I mean, I think last night probably cost Doc Rivers his job. You really have to put that into question. It's very similar to how all these other coaching firings have gone into place, especially with Monty Williams and Mike Budenholzer, Nick Nurse. That I think you have to come to a realization that it's been 10 years since the process. The process has been the definition of a failure. So I don't even think the process technically ever started if you actually look back on it. But Doc Rivers probably gets let go. You have to really contemplate, can you actually get rid of Tobias Harris's contract? $40 million is a lot of money. It's going to be tough to get rid of that. Harden's got the player option. So if he opts in, you're going to keep him because it's what you got. He opts out, you got to probably let him walk, right? I think from what he saw, I mean, James Harden showed up twice. The other 5 games, he was, I shouldn't even be on the floor bad. Like there was the highs and then there was rock bottom lows in this series from him. And don't get me wrong, he won them 2 of their games without question in this series. But he also lost you 3 out of the 4. right? And you could probably make the argument that it was all 4. Joe nailed it on the head. At halftime, you're in this game, and you made sure, and you did nothing defensively to make an adjustment. And basically, Maxey or Harden or whoever was covering Tatum was going over the screen. They were too slow. They were playing drop coverage, and he was walking into a 3 like it was a layup that entire third quarter. I mean, Jaylen Brown had 25, but are you kidding me? You should be living and dying with Al Horford, Marcus Smart, or Jaylen Brown beating you. No offense to Jaylen Brown. He is a rising star in this league. But the superstar shouldn't have been the reason that you lose this game. And Jason Tatum went absolutely ballistic in that first half. You would have thought that they would have made an adjustment to shut that down. And then you have Embiid and Harden looking like they don't want to be out there. You could see it. Probably by middle of the second quarter, when they knew that their offensive game was not clicking, their emotion looked like that they had just left the building. And then by the midway of the third quarter, before they even tried to make an adjustment, the game was already over.
Doc Rivers, 2003, a blown 3-1 lead to the eventual, I believe the eventual champion Pistons. 2009, blown 3-2 lead to the Magic. 2010, blown 3-2 lead in the finals to the Lakers. 2012, blew a 3-2 lead to the Miami Heat. 2015, blew a 3-1 lead to the Rockets. 2020, blew a 3-1 lead to the Bucks. This year, blew a 3-2 lead to the Boston Celtics. He's lost 5 straight Game 7s. He has coached in 16. It's the most ever. He's lost 10 of them. It's the most ever. He's blown the most 2-game leads as a head coach in the history of basketball. And for some reason, we sit here and continue to see teams hire Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers needs to go to the retirement. He needs to go to the unemployment line. He is done as a head coach. Now, does all the blame go on Doc Rivers? No, it does not. Because Joel Embiid, the 2023 Kia MVP in the NBA, quit last night. 15 points. Al Horford had Joel Embiid looking like a rookie all game long. There was no aggression offensively. There was no aggression defensively. He's getting the ball in the high post of Al Horford up on the elbow. Nothing to do with it. Can't get a move. No wiggle. He's shooting faders like he's Jason Tatum or Kevin Durant or something, and he's got the ability to do that. Not that he doesn't, but he just couldn't find a shot. You look at James Harden, who gave you 2 40 pieces in this series, and he follows it up with absolute dud in Game 7. The 76ers are an embarrassment. Now, there's a stat going around that Joel Embiid, he's the only MVP to never make it to a conference finals. In his defense, Joel Embiid is only the MVP this season. So this is technically the first time as an MVP that Joel Embiid hasn't made it to a conference finals. But the fact still remains that we have been trying to trust this process for a decade. And for a decade, we have watched the Sixers fail and fail and fail and fail and fail some more. It is something that Blaine Spencer is all too familiar with as a Commanders fan. And quite honestly, I think we need to reassess the Philadelphia 76ers status as an elite team, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in basketball. When you have a team like the Sacramento Kings, when you've got the Lakers, you've got the Nuggets, you've got the Celtics, you've got the Bucks when they're healthy, the Heat, no matter what seed there are. Like when you have all these teams being better than you, not by a bit, by leaps and bounds better than you, something needs to change. For all those people who think that Joel Embiid's the best center in basketball, the best center in basketball does not put up a Game 7 performance like the one we just saw last night. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people. And I know the Jokic an apology. Because even if Jokic lost that game against Boston, he would have had more than 15 points. I can assure you that. Joel Embiid failed last night. James Harden failed last night. Doc Rivers failed last night. If there's one person that should be in Philly no more, it is Doc Rivers. And I don't know if it's possible, but if James Harden picks up his player option, the Sixers should tell him not to and go back to Houston where he wants to be. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of James Harden, and I have defended James Harden time and time again. And I've said on this show several times and on others, as long as James Harden plays elite basketball, whether that's dropping 40 points a night or whether that's going 25 and 13, 25 and 15, the Sixers can win it all. 4 times James Harden played pro-am level basketball, and he failed. The Sixers are cooked. They're done. And for the 3rd time in the process era, they've been sent home, heartbreakingly, on a failure by Joel Embiid, on a failure by James Harden, and on a failure by Doc Rivers. And they should be ashamed of themselves. Until further notice, I do not want to hear anybody mention the Philadelphia 76ers in contendership status. It is unacceptable at this point to see them fail time after time after time after time again. And when your 2 best players quit on you, and one of them is the MVP of the league this season, that is a problem, and that is on Doc Rivers. They chose Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. How many conference finals appearances has that gotten? 0. How many times has Jimmy Butler been to the conference finals since he's left to go to Miami? 3 of the last 4 years. And the only time he didn't make it was after the shortest offseason in the history of basketball, coming off a season when he carried, as he always does, the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals and won a game against LeBron James and the eventual champion LA Lakers. The process is done. I don't know what part 2 of the process is. I don't know what part of the process we're on, but clearly it's not working. And they need to come up with a new one.
Truthfully, I don't even know why I got my hopes up for Game 7, right? I was getting ready. I was excited. I'm like, wow, we got a shot. I don't even know why I did, because truthfully enough, that Game 6 performance, the last 5 minutes, did enough for me, and I should have realized that we had no shot to ever be in that Game 7, even have a chance to win. We should have won that game. 5 minutes left. You're up 2 at home at Wells Fargo. The 76ers should have won it, and they lost it. Tatum goes off. Joel Embiid doesn't touch the ball for the last 5 minutes. Is that on Joel? Is that on Doc? It doesn't matter. Either way, you lost the game. So going into Game 7, should have never even got my hopes up. We should have known that we were going in there and we were losing. The other thing, every year, us 76ers fans and a good chunk of the media as well make excuses to some extent, why the 76ers exited round 2, right? You know, you had the triple doink of Kawhi, just, unlucky break there, right? Then you had the Atlanta Hawks series where Ben Simmons was completely non-existent in 4th quarters, finally got him to leave. Then before that, was the Kawhi at that case, and then before that was the bubble. So we just keep making excuses on excuses on excuses. There is no more excuse after yesterday's performance. That, frankly enough, is on Joel Embiid, it's on James Harden, and it's on Doc Rivers. What else can you do now? Because Daryl Morey, I thought, did very well this year in setting up this team for success personally. Bringing a dog in and PJ Tucker, getting the bench more solidified, having Paul Reed develop into a quality enough backup center behind Joel Embiid. But that's the performance that you get from the MVP in the league in Game 7. To me, that's enough said right there. Unbelievable stuff.
Game 6 on your home floor, closeout game, and the opposing team's best player is 1 for 10 from the field through 3 quarters, and you can't close out that basketball game despite your best player going 26 and 10, despite James Harden going for 13, 7, and 9, despite Maxey also throwing in 26 points in that game. There is a problem. If you want to say that Joel Embiid and James Harden quit on the 76ers in Game 7, hey, I ain't going to disagree with you. You want to put all the blame on Game 7 on Harden and Embiid? I got you. But the blame for Game 6 goes to Doc Rivers. How do you not capitalize on that? At home, your opposing team's best player, he had a point or 2 through 3 quarters. He had 19 points in the game, and they won. They won by 9. That means something wasn't happening. Now, we say all the time, you let someone else beat you. Well, Marcus Smart had 22 points. Jaylen Brown had 17. Robert Williams had 10. Al Horford had 2 points in 40 minutes. Derek White had 9. Malcolm Brogdon had 16. They played 7 players in Game 6, and they won the game when your 3 best players combined for 69 points. That is a problem. That's on Doc Rivers. The loss in Game 7, it's on Doc Rivers. It's on Joel Embiid. It's on James Harden. The Sixers, the process, bro, is done. Find a new one. I don't know what it looks like, but find a new one.
Besides Doc, Is the moment too big for James Harden and Joel Embiid? Is
The
that why
moment's
they
been
put
too
the-
big for James Harden for the last decade.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. There's one last thing before we go. Gentlemen, the same 4 teams that were in their conference finals a couple years ago in the bubble, what do you know it's the same 4 teams in the conference finals this year? The Lakers and the Nuggets in the West, the Celtics and the Heat in the East. Blaine, we'll start with you and we'll make this quick. Which 2 teams are we going to see in Game 1 on June 1st for the NBA title?
You're going to see the Denver Nuggets versus the Miami Heat.
Why?
Let's start with Denver. I think Denver's the most complete team in basketball. You've got Jokic, you've got Jamal Murray. The team is the most deep with Bruce Brown. You also have Jeff Green coming off the bench. I know the real issue for Denver will be who can guard. Can Jokic go up against Anthony Davis? My answer will say yes. But the one thing that Jokic will have to do is that he's going to have to defend in this series. Anthony Davis is not just going to roll over and allow Jokic to do whatever he wants and play optional defense. So taking Denver there. And then when it comes to Miami, they are the worst matchup in the Eastern Conference when it comes to those top 3 teams. Arguably, I've kind of been on this train that if you look at the teams that made the playoffs, the Miami Heat were probably more the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, not the 8. But they got into the dance, and then Jimmy Butler, like Joe said earlier, has turned into Michael Jordan. So I'm trusting the one man that will make sure that will carry his team, and I will guarantee that Jimmy Butler will make sure that Jason Tatum's not the reason that the Celtics win this series. If the Celtics do upset, it will be because of someone else. And this was something I said.
That when the Heat have a 3% chance to win the series? What did you just say?
What's that?
The Celtics would be an upset if they win, and they've got a 97%.
No, I said that the Miami will make sure that the Celtics aren't Jason Tatum's not the reason that the Celtics win the series.
Okay.
Sorry. And then this is mind-boggling to me that Eric Spoelstra has not won a Coach of the Year, but he is going to outcoach Joe Mazzulla by a lot in this series. So give me the Miami Heat.
Joe Ciccoletti, who's made it to the finals this year?
I'm taking the complete opposite of Blaine. I'm going with Boston Celtics, and I'm going with Los Angeles Lakers. The greatest rivalry in NBA history is going to get a repeat this year. Plain and simple, Boston Celtics are a fantastic team, one of the best teams in the East, maybe the best team in the East. As much as Miami is on a hot streak right now, Jason Tatum is playing good ball. Jaylen Brown is playing one of the best two-way balls I've seen in the playoffs this year. And they're clicking on all cylinders. They got a great bench as well. Plain and simple there. And I just don't think Miami Heat is going to be able to withstand that from the Boston Celtics. On the other side, I just can't go against the GOAT, unfortunately, there. I just can't go against LeBron James. I think Anthony Davis is going to be able to hold his own against Jokic to an extent. And, I can't go against King James, so I'm going to go to Los Angeles Lakers there.
There's a reason, Blaine, why Joe's a smart one. For the 13th time in NBA history, for all the marbles, literally, for the lead in all-time NBA Finals wins, for most banners in the history of basketball, we're going to see the Lakers and the Celtics again. The Denver Nuggets, shout out to Nikola Jokic and the crew in Denver, they're not going to beat the Lakers. We got Lakers in 6. I don't see any way that the Denver Nuggets win that series. On the other side, this is the rubber match of sorts between the Heat and the Celtics. They've met each other now in 3 of the last 4 conference finals. And the Celtics, they won the most recent one. I know that Jimmy Butler has all the momentum, but let's be honest here. I don't know if Jimmy Butler can win this series against the Celtics by himself. I just don't. When you're talking about one of the best teams in basketball, if not the best team in basketball, you've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You've got Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, 6th man of the year. You have Robert Williams, who would have been defensive player of the year last season. You've got Marcus Smart, who was the defensive player of the year last season. Al Horford put on a masterclass defensively against Joel Embiid last night in Game 7. The Boston Celtics, I think, are too much. While I understand the point about Eric Spoelstra outcoaching Joe Mazzulla, I do think that'll happen. But the Celtics have the better team. And I think the Celtics will get the job done. I don't know how many it will go because I can see this. I can see it being 5, 6, or 7. It won't be a sweep. Jimmy will get them at least one. But I do have the Celtics making it to the finals. I've got the Lakers making it to the finals. And we're going to get, as Joe said, one of the best rivalry in the history of sports for yet another time in the NBA finals for all the marbles. It is most
It's always nice to have Joe on the show, and not so much for Blaine. There
pleasure
you go.
to have Blaine Spencer on the show. It is never not a pleasure to have Joe Cicoletti on the show. Fellas, please plug yourselves and tell all the good people at home where they can find you and all your content.
Joe, you can do it this time.
Oh, Jesus. All right. Make sure you check us out at The Final Whistle. You can check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and I think Blaine's on TikTok as well. He's doing some great stuff on Instagram. Make sure you check out our latest podcast. It should be up in the next day or so. We'll be discussing almost what we discussed here. And on top of it, a little bit of the golf world as well. PGA Championship is going on this weekend, so we discussed some picks there as well. So, yeah, make sure you subscribe and like, and, of course, let us know how we're doing. And, hey, chime in. Marcus, thanks again for having us on, though, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Marcus.
I have to say, moment of transparency. Blaine Spencer texted me. I said, hey, Blaine, you want to come on the show? He said, sure. I sent him the topics today. He goes, I'll see if Joe can come on too. Well, I don't mind, but I would have preferred if you phrased it in a question. So like, oh, it's happening, buddy. But it's always a pleasure to have Joe on the show.
No, I make the executive decisions on the Give Us a Shot network.
Yikes. That won't be good for the network if you're making the executive decisions. Listen, speaking of the Give Us a Shot network, if you want more of Go Talk Marcus, subscribe to the network. If you want more of JT and the Don All Sports Podcast with JT and the Don, subscribe to the network. If you want more of Bert and Drim on Talk About Sports, subscribe to the network. If you want more of Mike and Corey on The Divide every Friday live on Fox Sports The Gambler, subscribe to the network. And if you want to hear more from the High Spot Podcast, subscribe to the network. This Wednesday, we're talking women's basketball again. My guy Martin Soares is coming back. The WNBA season tips off this Friday. There's a lot to talk about, so we are going to go live Wednesday night, 8 p.m. to talk women's basketball. As I've said before, whether or not you come to watch the show is none of my business. But just know, if you call yourself a fan of basketball and you don't like women's basketball, you're lying to yourself. You're a garbage human being. You are the scum of the earth. So, for Joe Cicoletti, Blaine Spencer, the Final Whistle Sports Podcast, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.